Hello, my name is Roslyn McFarland, and my novel, All the Lives We've Lived, was published late last year by Ginninderra Press. It has an unusual structure. It's a novel of interconnected short stories that blends fictional and historical characters and events. It tells the story of post-war Sydney suburbia, particularly the area that surrounds Saltpan Creek. When my main character, Kate Ward, returns to her childhood home on Saltpan Creek, she sees that the place of her youth no longer exists. But her memories, including a teenage romance with an indigenous boy, are very much alive. I'm going to read two short pieces from the early section of my novel, which I hope you'll enjoy. The first is from the story called In the Beginning. In the beginning. First he hears them coming from across the river, the slap, slap chorus of oars on water. Swift and silent, he sweeps through the bush, and once he's reached the top of the escarpment, he sees that the strangers have landed down below. One of them stays behind with their big canoe, while the other four men scramble up the hill and start to make their way towards his vantage point beneath the silvery grey canopy of the turpentine forest. He waits and watches as these strange people hack their way through the dense ferny undergrowth. They must be stopped. And then on cue, the dogs begin to bark, and a dozen of his men, yelling and waving their spears, step from their hiding places. One of them throws his spear wide of the trespassers, who seems to take this as a warning and begin to retreat. He's pleased because these people need to realise that they're not wanted here. They must stay away, well away, for good. Another spear is hurled, this time aimed directly at the four foreigners. It just misses its mark, and one of the men calls out to another, who aims his weapon and fires a shot that reverberates around the mighty sandstone cliffs that line the ancient river in these parts. This is Bidjigal country, and these marauders have no claim here. Their smoking, noisy weapons do not bode well. Pemulwuy sees his men are troubled. He knows that if they are to rid their homeland of these invaders, he must act quickly. A sudden flap of wings, then a stream of murderous caws cracks the sky above the treetops. It's a sign his men know well. They smile and turn to follow their leader back through the forest to their camp by the river, just a couple of miles north as the crow flies. My final reading is from Going Back, where Kate Ward is introduced. From where I begin my reading, she's standing outside the old family home, and she recalls the time when she was just about 6 years old, in the late 50s, when she, her mother, and her detective father first moved into what was then a little fibro house. And there she was, standing on the bare boards of the open veranda, squinting into the shimmering ugliness of their scorched backyard, full of rock and rubble, where her father, stripped to the waist, all muscle and power, was trying to level a mound of broken shells, some grey and dirty, some porcelain white and gleaming. Kate remembers him dripping with sweat, stopping for a moment and leaning on his sledgehammer. He looks up and, seeing his daughter, gives her a wave and a smile. She can't understand why he's so happy. The only thing that would make her smile right now would be if she and her mum and dad were back in their cosy one-bedroom flat in King's Cross. All dark wood and shadows. There was no glare there, ever. And on Sundays, each of her parents would take one of her hands, and the three of them would walk together down the big hill, past the stadium to Rushcutters Bay Park, where they'd eat sandwiches on the wooden bench beneath the shade of a giant Moreton Bay fig, and watch the sailing boats that were moored at the jetty. Kate loved listening for the clink, clink, clink that the boats made when their masts hit against metal. Afterwards, all three of them would have ice cream and stroll along the pathway that curved around the water's edge to look at all the pretty white sails skating across the sparkling blue rim of the harbour. But there wouldn't be any water here. Kate blinked and stared once more at the flinty backyard of her new home, her new view of the world. She told herself she mustn't cry, but then felt the touch of her father's hand on her shoulder. "So what do you think?" he asked. "I don't like it here." "Oh, you will," said her father. "Give it time, you'll see." "But there aren't any trees, and where's the water?" "Is that all you're worried about?" Her father sounded relieved. "If you go and help your mother unpack like a good girl while I finish as much as I can out here today, we'll all go for a little walk when I'm done and I'll show you the river. How would you like that?" "There's a river near here." She could scarcely believe it. "You bet there is," came his reply. "They call it a creek, but it's as wide and as long as a river." Kate now smiled. All things considered, she'd been happy here in this house made from fibro and love. And she also knew that until her final breath, this small block of suburban history would live within her. The polished linoleum and the neat kitchenette and the sing-alongs around the pianola and the smell of Sunday lamb roasts and the terrible daylight quiet when her father was asleep after being on night duty, and the perfumed marriage of California poppy hair oil and Yardley's April violets eau de toilette, and their black Bakelite telephone's unlisted number, and the winter morning huddle with her baby brother in front of the kerosene heater, and her mother, forever chain-smoking, sitting at the window of her darkened bedroom, watching the street that was waiting for her husband to come home. Thank you for listening.